Welcome to the Family Brand Show. We're Chris and Melissa Smith of FamilyBrand.com, husband and wife, parents of 5, and we want to help you take back your family and to live life on your terms.
And we know being a family can feel really overwhelming. Parents tell us they feel like they're being pulled in a million different directions. It's so challenging to navigate the uncertainty and all the chaos that's happening in the world right now.
And that's why we want to bring you every single week actionable tips and strategies that you can implement in your daily life to become a better parent, to become a better spouse, and to build a stronger family. And look, there's never been a better time and a more important time than right now to take back your family. You can define what your family stands for, or the world is going to do it for you. And the world needs strong families now more than ever. And it starts right here with your family.
So for this episode of the Family Brand Podcast, we are celebrating 4 years. I actually can't believe that.
Woo! I just got to put a plug in here for Melissa. She says we are celebrating. I think it would be more appropriate to say Melissa is celebrating 4 years of the Family Brand Podcast, dragging Chris along behind her.
Some weeks do feel a little like dragging.
Melissa is the hero. I say this all the time. If it was up to me, I would have every intention. And I think Melissa's missed 2 or 3 weekly episodes in 4 years, which boggles my mind. So congratulations, Melissa. You're a powerful leader for families.
So we just thought this would be fun. Nothing is scripted for this episode. We just wanted to kind of jam on the last 4 years of the Family Brand Podcast, like big takeaways, conversations that have changed us. And you might notice our audio sounds different. This is so random, but we record our podcast, at least currently, every Tuesday at 1 p.m. And it just so happens that Chris arrived to record our podcast today in a school bus.
A small school bus.
A small school bus, because he's coaching our daughter, Ivy's 7th grade basketball team. And then when he pulled up in the school bus, I just had this idea. I was like, wouldn't it be fun to record this anniversary episode in the school bus? Because the podcast has taken us on so many adventures through so many places throughout the world. Like I remember recording episodes in Europe and in Las Vegas and in Hawaii and so many different places.
Now in a school bus.
Now in a school bus in our front yard in Arizona. But I just thought that would be kind of funny and some random behind the scenes, like we're recording this from a school bus.
And I tried to get Melissa to make out with me in the school bus, but she said no.
That actually didn't happen.
So,
because I would have.
Okay, 4 years. Melissa, tell me what, I guess I am curious, and maybe this is a lesson for all of us. What has had you be so committed that you have gotten a weekly episode out every single week for 4 years? Minus, again, like literally she's missed maybe 2 or 3 episodes in 4 years.
I think, initially the podcast challenged me. And there's still some challenging things about it. But initially it was like really challenging because I wanted to speak better. I wanted to speak more powerfully. And the podcast felt like a way for me to practice that. And then I think as time has gone on, I really love that I get to have really meaningful conversations with you and with other guests. I love that I get to, if I meet someone that has an interesting story or something that I think could benefit families, I love that I have a platform now where I can bring them, onto the podcast and have conversations that have changed me and that will change other families. I just think what a cool opportunity, what a cool thing, what an amazing place we are in the world where me from my house that I can put out airwaves, your sound waves rather, into the world that hopefully like raise the vibration of humanity and raise the vibration of families. And I just love that we get to do that.
That's amazing. And it still doesn't it answers the question a little bit, like, because you love it. And I think Cassidy, who helps us with all things related to the podcast, and she's amazing.
Thank you, Cassidy. She's been with us from the beginning, like before we even launched our first episode. So shout out to you, Cassidy. Thank you. Yeah,
Cassidy and her team are amazing. And I think Cassidy said to us, I'm not going to be completely accurate, but something like 97% of all podcasts never make it past like the 3rd or 4th episode. So even though you love it, even though it gives you this platform, what has had the Family Brand Podcast not be one of those statistics? Like what has had you have just this like grit and determination? What's had you get that dog in you to like show up to it every single week. Besides, it's a cool platform and it's an awesome gift that you have to be able to share your voice with the world.
I should have premeditated this, but
That's why there's no, well, we're not scripted for this 4th anniversary.
okay. I just feel like a calling to do it.
Yeah.
I don't feel like there's necessarily anything deeper than that other than I want to do it and I feel a calling to it and I feel like it can change lives.
Do you feel like because of the way you felt called to Family Brand by God, where you really felt like God was like, hey, build my kingdom by building families? When you say called, do you reflect on that experience often around Family Brand or when things are hard or when you don't want to do a weekly episode or when life's chaotic and do you ever reflect back? But I felt called to do this. Like this was a calling for me.
Yeah, for sure. I think now that it's been so long, also, it's somewhat of like a habit also. And so it's like when I have this, it's almost like a streak that I can't break my streak. I think more early on, especially when I didn't trust my voice as well and felt more like, what do I have to say or what do I have to offer? I think it felt more like, but no, I know that I'm called to this. And it still does feel that way for sure.
So you knew you felt called to it, and yet, like probably a lot of entrepreneurs or individuals who were stepping into a calling, maybe felt some imposter syndrome. Like, what do I have to share? What do I have to say? I'm sure that comes up for you at times, like it does for everyone. And because you have hundreds of reviews now, and you do receive thousands and thousands of downloads every month, and you do have so many families who've talked about and this has been one of the coolest things. Melissa and I can go anywhere in the world. And Melissa's like recognized. I always say she's recognized out in the wild. They're like, oh, you're the one that has a Family Brand podcast. Has seeing the impact of it helped you maybe not feel as much like an imposter? Like has seeing the impact of it helped you realize like, no, I do have something. I am offering something of worth. I do have a voice. My voice does matter.
Yes, definitely. And I think it still requires, I don't know if it's like this for everyone, but for me, it still requires me to manage my mind around it. Because even though we do have, like you said, hundreds of thousands of downloads, hundreds of reviews, I still do, I still can lose sight of it and be like, why am I even doing this? Like, what? What? There's so many podcasts out there. Like, does this podcast really make a difference? And it still does require me to be like intentional with it and really manage my mind around it.
Okay, what has been some of your favorite episodes? And again, I know I'm just asking you off the top of your head. So yeah, what are some ones that just stand out to you as impactful episodes in particular?
Well, we actually asked some friends, or we have some friends, Jeremy and Shauna Smith, they asked me this question more or less. I think we were with them this past summer. Like, what are some of your favorite episodes? And so remember, and I asked them back, like, as listeners of the Family Brand podcast, like, what have been some of your favorites? And I think we could all agree on a handful. One in particular that comes to mind is this one episode by Thomas McConkey. It was, I think, in our first year. I'll try and link all these in the show notes. Thomas McConkey talking about navigating a faith crisis. And it was this episode about how we see this a lot in families, how families have differing faith traditions, whether that's like their children are choosing to leave the faith tradition that they have been raised in, or whether that's two partners who have a different beliefs, and how that's really hard to navigate. And it is hard to navigate. You know, the strong families, they have, according to the research, they have a shared spirituality. And that doesn't mean religion, but I think that's something that it does impact all families. So I love this conversation that we had with Thomas talking about spirituality and families and how to navigate some of these harder topics in families. And one thing that came out of that episode for me is he talked about, you'll have to listen to it because I'm not doing it justice talking about it so briefly, but he talks about with our kids when they're little, it's so easy to want them and to accept them. But he's like, but what about when our kids get older? You have to still keep wanting your kids, even when they're teenagers and they're driving you crazy or making choices you don't agree with necessarily. Do you still want them? And are you still there and like willing to work it out like to the very end? So that idea of wanting, I think, is this idea that I revisit a lot.
It's awesome. Clearly, you can tell that was one of Melissa's favorites because she's almost like going into the entire podcast episode, which is awesome.
That's good. What about you?
I would say the one that comes to mind is Why Your Marriage is Worth Fighting For. I think it's a very confronting episode, but it's very raw, maybe the most raw and authentic episode we've ever shot. And we can link to both of these in the show notes. I'm getting pretty good, Melissa. I even know how to say we'll link to those in the show notes.
Good job.
We've had a lot of people who have said that episode really challenged them. It inspired them. It confronted them, but it really, made a difference for them. I would say that one of the first episodes we shot, how the words you speak create the culture in your home. And just we've had a lot of people say wow, that episode really had me be way more intentional about what I say and how I talk in my family. And there's just been so many, I almost don't even want to start going down this path because then I won't be able to stop. But so many just great conversations Melissa and I've had, so many great people that we've interviewed and had on as guests, so many great solo episodes that, Melissa's done. And I'll say a lesson that I've learned from the podcast is that consistent beats unique. Consistent trumps spectacular. Consistency is so, I think, underrated in so many aspects of life, whether it's having a podcast, going to the gym, investing in your relationship.
Bam. If we're talking about family, people ask me this all the time about family, meetings or family rituals. It's consistency beats big spectacles or big productions that you do, occasionally.
Even they talk about the power of family traditions. What makes family traditions based on the research so profound isn't necessarily the tradition itself as much as it is the consistency of the tradition, that kids know oh, this is something we can count on. So I think that's just a huge takeaway. And the quote by Bill Gates, we overestimate what we can do in a year and underestimate what we can do in 10. That I don't think that when we first started the Family Brand podcast, we could have imagined what it would have created and where it would have led. And you certainly want it to happen faster. But you look 4 years in and it's wow, that's pretty impactful. But it's a consistency. I think another lesson is when you do feel called to something, it doesn't have to make sense to anyone else. It doesn't even have to make sense to you. It's why am I doing this? I don't even know. I just feel called to it. And sometimes people will be like, what does that even mean? It's I don't know that either. Just a feeling. I just feel like this is something I want to do.
Yeah, we just recorded an episode about that last month, I think, about that calling. And honestly, if I look back, we had no business starting a podcast about families 4 years ago. But I'm really glad that we did. What a beautiful journey.
Anything else you'd share, Melissa? And well, I think we maybe the first thing we should have said is thank you who are listening. I mean, there's a number of you who have actually listened from the beginning for 4 years. And when people come up to me and they're like, man, I've been listening to your podcast since the beginning. Part of me's really? You don't get tired of, hearing, obviously not Melissa, but I'm wow, thank you for, it's, you can have a podcast with no listeners, I guess, but the fact that you all listen and share it and support and the number of people that we do run out to in public that are oh, you guys have the Family Brand podcast. My aunt, sister-in-law, my brother, my mom, my dad, my friends send it to me. So the fact that you listen and support and you share it with others is just incredible.
Thank you. Yeah, that is a great point. And I love that we've taken this journey together, really. And I love your commitment, anyone listening, to your family, to building strong families. And it's an effort that I know will be such a huge reward. Any effort spent there is time well spent.
Well, Melissa, proud of you. I'm inspired by you. You are the fearless leader of the Family Brand podcast. I'm honored that you allow me to be on it and give me the undeserving title of co-host. And here's to the next 4 years.
4 years. Before we go, we're going to talk about this in another week or two, but I want to tease our New Year stuff. So go to familybrand.com/best. We have tons of really cool New Year stuff coming at you. We'll talk more in detail, but if you want to get a head start on how to close out this year powerfully and head into the next year, you can get a head start by going there.
Yeah, I'm gonna promote that as well. I will make 3 bold promises to you. If you follow this approach that Melissa's laid out very simply, super, super simple, super fun at familybrand.com/best. If you follow it, you will receive more wisdom, insights, and lessons from 2024 than any year that you've ever completed. You will have more fun on New Year's Eve as a family than you've ever had. And you will be more intentional heading into the new year as a family than you've ever been. And keyword is as a family. So it's not just a way to bring your year to a close as a family or have a New Year's Eve party, individually and head into the new year. It's like together as a family, which that's really rare. That's really unique. There's lots of approaches of like how to bring your year to a close and have a fun New Year's and set goals for the new year as an individual, or a lot of companies do this. But this is a very unique approach for families. familybrand.com/best.
Love you. Thank you for being here on this adventure with us. Thanks for hanging out with us today on the Family Brand Podcast. But wait, before you go, I want to give you something. It's something I stole out of our Family Brand Academy because I thought it would make a big difference for you, and I want you to have it for free, no strings attached. It's how we run our family meetings, and not just our family meetings that we have every week, but also our family check-ins, which is this system we've developed for how to connect with our kids and each other, Chris and I, every single week. And we've had some great outcomes with this. Not only have we, but a lot of families that have implemented this have as well. Actually, life-changing outcomes, if I'm being honest. You'll definitely want to get this. Go get your copy at familybrand.com/meeting, and we will catch you next time.